This video will show you how to stop chasing motivation and start generating energy, even if nothing in your life changes. Most people think they need stronger why. This will show you why that belief is quietly training your life. What you're fighting for is not necessarily fighting for you. Let me say that again. What you are fighting for is not necessarily fighting for you. Pause with that for a moment, because most of us live our entire lives fighting for something without ever questioning whether that thing is actually on our side. Have you ever really thought about that? That whatever your reason is to keep going, to push forward, to conquer, to succeed, to meet your goals, that reason itself might not be aligned with you. It might be training you, it might be consuming you, it might even be using you. And yet you call it purpose. So let me ask you something honestly. What is your vision? Not what sounds good, not what you say out loud, but what actually lives inside you. And this is the important part. Tell me why you are after that vision. Why? Is it because of your family? Because of love? Because you want to protect someone? Is it because you are trying to prove something to yourself, to your parents, to the world? Is it because you want to stop something, a disease, an injustice, a cycle, a system, or even something as big as war? What is the real reason behind what you do? Because here is something most people never stop to consider. People without a vision may perish, but people without a why will never see their vision come alive. And here is the part that surprises almost everyone. Even when your dream comes true, the outcome might not be what you expected. Sometimes the dream succeeds and you fail. Sometimes the goal is reached and you feel emptier than before. So let me tell you a story, and I want you to listen to it not as a fairy tale, not as entertainment, but as mirror. Once there was a great warrior born into a poor family. He was strong, he was handsome, he was gifted. He grew up under the protection of the army and became the greatest soldier ever known in human history. Not only was he powerful in battle, but his presence alone drew people toward him. Women admired him, dreamed of him. He had everything a man could want in his position. At that time, there were rules written in stone, and something written in stone could not be changed. That was the law. That was the order. Those rules were created to preserve the past and control the future. Rules existed so people would know what to expect, what was possible and what was forbidden. One day, the great warrior was summoned by the king himself. The king wanted to see who this man was that everyone was talking about. The day came, the warrior entered the palace and was treated better than ever before. The king welcomed him as a guest. As the warrior walked down the long hallway toward the throne, the hall was filled with people, servants, counselors, soldiers, and beside the king stood the queen. As the warrior approached, a bright light reflected from the queen's jewelry. It caught his attention. A queen so beautiful, there was no comparison. Eyes so deep, they felt endless. And in that instant, something happened. The warrior didn't just see a woman, he fell into a dream. For the first time in his life, he felt something deeper than strength, something deeper than ambition, something he could not control. The feeling turned into obsession, thoughts of being with the queen, thoughts of getting closer, thoughts of owning her, thoughts of seeing those eyes just once more and forever. The king noticed. He saw the warrior's gaze. He felt the intention immediately. It was as clear as the sun burning in the sky. The king stood from his throne and said, "I have heard much about you. Today you are as my guest. You may ask anything. If it is appropriate and reasonable, I will grant it. So tell me, what is it that you want?" The warrior barely heard the words. His mind was already elsewhere. The king, older, smaller, weaker, barely registered in his awareness. Still the warrior answered, "Is everyone in this palace as mesmerizing as the queen?" Silence. The hall froze, as if someone pressed pause on reality itself. The queen looked at the warrior. The king final. "I see you lack manners, young man. There is none like the queen, not in beauty, not in anything else. That is why I love her deeply. If it is woman you seek, I can arrange many. Most would be more than happy to be with you." And the king ordered a celebration. Music filled the palace. Food overflowed. Flowers fell. Women surrounded the warrior. But in the middle of everything, his eyes searched for one thing only: the queen. She was gone. The king and queen had vanished. As the night deepened, frustration grew. No woman could compare. The next morning, the warrior was sent home. But something had changed. The restlessness lived in his chest. He was convinced the queen had felt the same. Two thoughts battled inside him. One said, "She deserves someone stronger, younger, greater. She deserves me." The other whispered, "She belongs to the king." But he dismissed that thought. The king was just a man, weak, born into power, and the law written in stone said, "Only a noble may marry a noble." The warrior could never have her, or so it seemed. The next night came, and for the first time in his life, the great warrior could not sleep, not because of fear, not because of battle, but because of a thought that refused to leave him. The more he resisted it, the stronger it became. Every attempt to push it away only fed it more. He began to imagine the queen thinking of him. What if she felt the same? What if that look was not accidental? What if she, too, felt trapped, forced into a marriage she never wanted, bound by laws written in stone, by tradition, by expectations? What if she was waiting for someone strong enough to see her and free her? "I have to rescue her," the warrior thought. And notice this moment carefully, because this is where most lives quietly change direction. Not through logic, not through truth, but through interpretation. The warrior began to build a story, a beautiful story, a story where he was not obsessed, but chosen, a story where his desire was actually destiny. He began to imagine himself fighting for her, changing laws, breaking traditions, becoming something impossible. He realized something important. He could never be with her as he was. He wasn't noble. So he decided to become noble. No, that wouldn't be enough. He would become a king. And this is where the saying comes in: love conquers the impossible. He held that dream so tightly, it burned inside him. He didn't know how he would become a king. He didn't need to know. He only knew what he wanted. And that desire was so strong that reality began to bend around it. Opportunities appeared, coincidences stacked. He started studying what nobleman studied: philosophy, art, sciences, politics. He began behaving like a king long before he became one. Day by day he lived as if the dream had already come true. Eventually, he left the army without explanation, without farewell. He traveled, months passed, 10 years. He studied relentlessly, not because he loved knowledge, but because knowledge served his dream. Rumors spread. People said the greatest warrior had died. And in a way, they were right, because the warrior was buried in his own mind. Something else was being crafted. A king. He became skilled in business, accumulated wealth, built influence. He gathered followers. They called him king long before he wore a crown. He trained soldiers, built an army, and deep inside, quietly, his true target remained unchanged. The king of his past, the man standing beside the queen. Years later, the moment arrived. The new man was ready. The army marched. The battle was brutal. Thousands died. Families shattered. Women and children faced death unless they accepted the new ruler. Blood paved the road to the palace, and finally the halls were reached. The king stood there, and beside him the queen. Still beautiful, still radiant, waiting. The former warrior approached, sword in hand. He smiled at her. This was it. This was the moment his entire life had been building toward. He raised the sword, one final strike, and suddenly the queen stepped forward. She took the blow. No, the warrior screamed. Why, my love? Why would you do this? The queen recognized him. I'm already in love with my husband, she said softly. There is no one like him. For him, I would do more than die. Confusion shattered the warrior. But the look you gave me, the queen, bleeding, answered. That look was for another young, foolish man thinking through his ego. Those were her final words. She died. Now, listen. This is not a story about romance. This is a story about misplaced fuel. The warrior achieved everything: power, wealth, victory. But the reason that drove him was never meant to carry him. What he was fighting for was never fighting for him. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people are living this story right now. They are chasing dreams, powered by validations, by proof, by resistance, by ego. And even if they succeed, the outcome betrays them because the fuel was wrong. Now let me get to the point of this story, because this story is not about a warrior, a king or a queen. It's about you. You most likely have a dream, and inside that dream, you believe you are living for maybe someone else, for your family, for your children, for love, for justice, for the world, for a cause bigger than you. And listen carefully now, because if that is true, it may cost you a lifetime to realize something very simple. Your dream is beautiful, but the reason behind it is your own creation. And if you outsource that reason, you will eventually suffer for it. Because what you are really doing is handing your steering wheel to something outside of you. And the moment that thing changes, disappears, or refuses your sacrifice, you collapse, just like the warrior did. Here is the paradox. What is best for all is also best for you. But what you think is best for all might not be. And this is why your reasons must always be personal. Wyatt, honest, detached, you can fuel a car to drive it. But if you obsess over the fuel, you forget the journey. And if the fuel changes, you stop moving. So don't obsess over the fuel, obsess over the journey. The fuel exists only to keep you moving, nothing more. And here is the beautiful part. The fuel never ends. It only changes form, from petrol to diesel to electricity, from money to meaning, from anger to curiosity, from love to joy, from pain to play. Even thought alone can move the body when everything else is gone. So who cares? Continue the journey. You can say, I do this because of you. But the moment that person says, I don't want you to do this for me, change the fuel and keep moving. Because the journey was never theirs. It was always yours. So many times in my own life, I have done things for something only to realize later that it never needed me, but I needed it to keep going. And there is hard truth most people avoid. Everything keeps going even if you stop. Life does not wait, which is why the reason is not as important as the experience. The reason exists only to keep you creating, moving, exploring. The reason can be anything that energizes you. There are no small reasons and no big reasons. Only the mind makes them big or small. To someone like me, happiness and enjoyment are enough. That alone is a sufficient reason to create. If you know how to generate energy, how to gather it, how to amplify it, you can do almost anything in this life. One way is to create a powerful why. Another way is to invent an enemy, to fight something so big that it demands superhuman strength. But ask yourself, what if you win and still lose, like the warrior? What if you achieve everything and the meaning collapses? This is why detachment matters, not indifference. Detachment. Detachment means I will walk this path fully, but I will not chain my work to the outcome, because outcomes are unstable, temporary. They arrive and disappear in the same moment. Life has no stagnant outcomes. Everything is in motion. Everything changes except one thing, now. And even now is constantly changing. This is one of life's greatest paradoxes. You can become the strongest, the fastest, the smartest, the richest, the most admired, and the moment you arrive, it's gone, like sand through your fingers. So the only real question is, did you enjoy becoming? Did you enjoy the process? Did you feel alive while moving? Because applause fades, achievements expire, time eventually takes everything back. And if you didn't enjoy the experience, it was all empty. So start enjoying today, not tomorrow, not after you succeed, not after approval, today. Do the same things, but do them fully. Not for why you do them, but for what you are doing right now. The why gives you motion, but presence gives you life. So keep your power in the now, not in the future. And this is where the teaching lands, not as a command, not as a belief, but as an invitation to walk, to explore, to play, to experience, to create without chaining your soul to outcomes that were never meant to hold it. There is one more layer. It is not about what you do anymore. It is about how you exist while doing it. Most people live their lives against something, against the system, against money, against time, against their past, against their parents, against their body, against their emotions, against the world. And when you live against something, you are always in resistance. Resistance burns energy. It doesn't matter how noble your cause is. If your fuel is opposition, you will always feel tired. Even victories will exhaust you because you are carrying an enemy with you everywhere you go. And here is the part that might sting a little. The enemy is never outside. It is always internalized. Let me ask you something. What happens inside your body when you think of the thing you are fighting? Do you relax or do you tighten? Do you feel open or contracted? Because the body never lies. The body knows immediately whether something is aligned or trained. If your nervous system activates into tension, you are not creating from power. You are reacting from survival. This is why the deepest freedom is not winning. It is no longer needing to win. When you don't need to defeat anything, your energy returns to you. And suddenly, creativity increases. Joy becomes accessible. Time feels slower. Effort feels lighter. Not because life got easier, but because you stop carrying unnecessary weight. Think about water. Water never fights the rock. It moves around it. Over time, it shapes everything. Water wins without resistance. This is not weakness, this is intelligence. Now, here is where people misunderstand this. They think, so I should be passive. No, not at all. This is not about doing nothing. This is about acting without inner friction. There is a massive difference. A warrior who fights because he hates will destroy himself. A warrior who moves because he loves the path never burns out. Same action, different inner state, completely different outcome. Let me bring this back to your life. Look at what you are doing right now, your work, your goals, your responsibilities. Ask yourself honestly, am I doing this because I am running from something or because I am moving toward something? And then go even deeper. If the thing I am moving toward disappeared tomorrow, would I still enjoy the movement itself? Because if the answer is no, you have changed your energy to an outcome. And change always hurt in the long run. This is why detachment is not coldness. It is maturity. Detachment says, I will give my full effort, but I will not sacrifice my presence. I will care deeply, but I will not abandon myself. I will create boldly, but I will not make my work conditional. This is inner leadership. Now let's talk about something even more radical: silence. Most people are afraid of silence because silence removes distraction. And when distraction is gone, truth becomes loud. But silence is where your real guidance lives. Not in motivation, not in fear, not in comparison, in silence. When you are quiet enough, you don't need enemies. You don't need reasons. You don't need justifications. Action becomes obvious. Rest becomes obvious. Movement becomes natural. This is why some people seem lucky. They are not lucky. They are aligned. They don't fight life. They cooperate with it. They listen. They respond. They move when it's time to move. They stop when it's time to stop. And because of this, their energy compounds instead of leaking. Here is something very important. Life is not asking you to prove anything. It never did. That was a story you learned. Life is asking you to participate fully, playfully, honestly, and without self-betrayal. So if you remember nothing else from this entire video, remember this. You don't need a better enemy. You don't need a stronger why. You don't need a perfect plan. You need presence in what you are doing. Detachment from how it must end. Enjoyment in the movement itself. That is the formula. Not for success, but for a life that actually feels alive. And now we arrive at the end. Not an ending, but a settling. If you listen closely, you will notice something. Nothing here asked you to become someone else. Nothing asked you to fix yourself. Nothing demanded urgency. Because urgency is fear in disguise. And fear is never a good compass. Let me say this clearly. You were never broken. You were never behind. You were never late. Those were stories you adapted to explain discomfort. But discomfort is not an error. It is a signal. Most people live as if life is a problem to solve. They wake up already tense, already chasing, already evaluation, already negotiating with the future. And then they wonder why peace feels rare. But peace doesn't come from getting it right. Peace comes from stopping the inner argument. The argument with time, the argument with outcomes, with should, with who you think you must be. When the argument ends, energy returns. And when energy returns, life becomes generous again. Here is the quiet truth. You don't need to justify your existence. You don't need a perfect reason to live. You don't need heroic narrative. You are allowed to be here because you are here. That's it. When you stop outsourcing meaning, meaning starts arising naturally from simple things, from walking, from thinking, from creating, from listening, from being curious, from resting without guilt. This is what major freedom looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, not impressive, but real. Remember the story of the warrior. He thought the queen was the reason, but she was never the reason. She was the projection, the mirror that activated his energy, the spark that moved him. But the movement itself was always his. And that is the lesson. Your fuel can change. Your reason can change. Your direction can change. But your capacity to move, create, and experience is always yours. So do not confuse the fuel with the journey. Worship the reason. Don't imprison yourself in outcomes. Life does not reward obsession. It rewards presence. Life does not respond to force. It responds to coherence. When your inner state is calm, the outer world reorganizes. Not magically, naturally. You don't need to fight the system. You don't need to escape society. You don't need to destroy anything. You need to stop feeding what drains you and start nourishing what expands you. That's all. So here is the simplest way to live this. Every day, ask yourself, does this give me energy or take it? Not morally, not socially, not intellectually, energetically, and trust the answer, even when it surprises you. Especially then, you will notice something beautiful. When you stop forcing meaning, meaning multiplies. When you stop chasing happiness, joy becomes accessible. When you stop proving, stabilizes. When you stop resisting life, life starts collaboration. And one last thing, this is important. You don't need to share this. You don't need to explain it. You don't need validation. Some truths are not meant to be broadcast. They are meant to be lived quietly, so continue your journey. Change fuel when needed. Detach from outcomes. Stay present in the movement. Enjoy what you are doing while you are doing it. That is the art. That is the freedom. That is the point. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and most of all, stay awake inside your own life.